So there you have the seven covenants. They're all progressive, and when God was every time God added a covenant, it did not replace the previous one. And so what you see is God's number seven of perfection. It prophetically represents it's symbolic of perfection. And so God taking creation, humanity, through these seven covenants brings us to perfection in Yeshua. That's why he says, be perfect as I'm perfect. All right, so the four fundamental or the covenants that I wanted to also point out are the blood covenant. And basically, the blood covenant, uh, it we're to serve and obey God. We all have to come through the blood covenant, and it typifies serving and obeying the Lord. The next covenant, and God initiates these covenants. We do not initiate them; He does. Then you have the salt covenant, which is the covenant of hospitality or friendship. And the way that covenant was entered into, let's say you had three Hebrew men that wanted to enter into this covenant of friendship. And what they would do is come together. Each would have a pouch of salt, and they would all pour their pouches of salt in a common bowl. And then they would take bread and they would, dip it in the salt, and they would take communion. They'd have communion with each other. Then they would take this bowl of salt and separate it back up into the pouches and give one back to each of the men. The only way to break this covenant would be to separate each grain of sand and give it back to its original owner. Not sand, salt. And give it back to its original owner. And since you cannot do that, the covenant cannot be broken. It's an everlasting covenant. And so Abraham was modeling this salt covenant when Yahweh and the two angels came to his tent, and Abraham, fixed him a meal. He had Sarah fix him a meal. They were modeling the salt covenant there. And God does everything by legal means. There was a purpose for that. And if you just read the Bible, you won't really get that unless you understand the Hebraic idioms and expressions and that were used in the Bible and the history also. But so God does everything by legal means, okay? And Abraham, right after that encounter with Abraham, when he leaves with the two angels, he basically, I'm paraphrasing, this is in Genesis 18 and 19. He says, should I not tell Abraham, my friend, what I'm about to do to Sodom and Gomorrah? And so Abraham, when he tells Abraham, Abraham approaches him and he begins to intercede on behalf of the righteous in the city, right? And you know the story. Will you destroy the city if there's 50 righteous men there? And God says no, and they go back and forth, okay? And but Abraham would not have the legal right to approach God to intercede on behalf of the righteous, because God does what he purposes in his heart. Who can keep him from doing what he's already purposed in his heart? But if you're in covenant with the Lord, you can approach him. And that's why God brought Abraham into this covenant with him, to give Abraham the legal right to approach him to intercede on behalf of the righteous. It's because this is Abraham, my friend. And so Abraham was now a friend of God, but he never stopped serving and obeying him. So the salt covenant did not replace the blood covenant. It just added to and expanded it. All right. So then you have the next one is the sandal covenant, which is, it's the covenant of inheritance. It's the covenant of sonship. And most of the time when you read in the Bible and you see, you read about sandal, it's covenant language. But if you don't know that, you'll read right past it. And so in back in ancient times, they used to use old, worn out sandals to mark the boundaries of property that was to be inherited one day by, the next generation. And so that's where the sandal covenant name comes from. And you see that I'm gonna just share this with you. So let me just say that uh, the sandal covenant was, you had to be of the right bloodline in order to inherit anything, especially from God. You couldn't inherit anything if you weren't from the bloodline. And if you weren't in that covenant, the covenant of sonship, you couldn't inherit from, someone. And you see this happening starting with Abraham. When this Melchizedek comes in Genesis 14 and uh, breaks bread with him, has communion with him, he's basically bringing Abraham into God's bloodline, the bloodline of the Melchizedek. You could just call it adoption. This is where the adoption uh, started, that I know of, from what I can tell. This is a great picture of adoption. And so the king of Sodom, after this encounter with this Melchizedek, comes to Abram and says, "Look, you can keep all the goods. Just return back the women and children to me." Abraham had just defeated 5 kings and their armies, and some of these were Nephilim. But the king of Sodom said, "Hey, just give me the women and children, and you can keep all the goods." And Abraham says, "No, I've already lifted my hands, and I've taken a vow to God that I will take nothing from a thread to a sandal strap." Well, that's covenant language there. It's not just being humble. And so covenant language, the sandal covenant. Remember in previous, before this encounter with the Melchizedek, God has, Abram separate from Lot. And Lot leaves. And after he's gone, God says, "Now lift up your head and look in all 4 directions. As far as you can see, I'm going to give you these lands. I'm going to give you this land to you and your descendants." And then he says this. He says, "Now get up and walk the length and the breadth of it." And could it be, this is just my thought here, my supposition, could it be that God says to Abram, "Get up and walk the length and the breadth of the land," so that he could lay down the sandals to mark the land? I don't know. But it's not long after that he says, "I've already lifted my hand and taken a vow to God that I'll take nothing from a thread to a sandal strap. You're not going to ruin this for me, king of Sodom." The next time you see, and I'm just kind of, this isn't in the notes, but I'm just kind of sharing this off the top of my head because I think it's important to understand these covenants. So you see the sandal covenant the next time with Moses. Remember, God operates through legalities, right? Legal means. So he's never accused of unrighteousness or doing anything illegal, because if God ever did one little thing, who's going to be in the courts of heaven accusing him day and night. So everything he does is done in righteousness. The next time you see the sandal covenant is when Moses is at the burning bush. And, he turns aside to see why this bush is not burning. And then he hears God speak to him from the bush, "Take your sandals off your feet." And so it's the reason why he said that it's covenant language. Again, like I said, he's basically saying, "Moses, you have to come into this covenant of sonship with me, this covenant of inheritance. Because if you don't, I can't legally use you to take the children of Israel out of Egypt and into the promised land. It has to be done legally." And so in order for that to take place, you have to come into this covenant with me. Take your sandals off your feet. Then Moses dies. Get to Joshua chapter 1, and God says to him, "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now you get up. You get up. What I started with Moses, I'm going to finish with you." And you go a little further to Joshua chapter 5, the end of the chapter. You got, I think it's like the last 3 verses. And Joshua has this encounter with the commander of the Lord's armies in heaven. And he falls on his face. I mean, he basically says, are you for us? Or are you for our adversaries? And this angel of the Lord says, I'm not for either of you. I'm here. What are you going to do about it, Joshua? And Joshua falls on his face and begins to worship him. And we know that this is not an angel, because he would have said, "Don't worship me. I'm an angel." But he didn't do that. He says to Joshua, after Joshua asks him, "What does my Lord say to his servant?" He says, "Joshua, take your sandal off your foot." And what was happening there was basically this: Joshua, take your sandals off your feet. And we need to enter into this covenant. We need to do this ritual. We need to come into this covenant of inheritance so that I can legally use you to finish what I started with Moses. And then you see from there in the story of Ruth how Boaz basically, redeems her and brings her into his bloodline, which is the bloodline of the Melchizedek, the Messiah. And the confirming of that covenant was the exchanging of the sandal in the gate of the city. And you know that from Ruth came, King David. And then let's fast forward to John the Baptist now. What does John the Baptist say? He says, there's one who was before me, who came after me, who's preferred above me. In one translation, one of the Gospels, he says, whose sandal straps I'm not worthy to undo. That's covenant language there, okay? He's talking about inheritance. He says in another Gospel, he says, I cannot stoop down low enough to undo those sandals. Another one, he says, I can't carry them. The burden's too big. That's a burden too big. But let me go back to, I cannot stoop down low enough. What he was saying is, this covenant of inheritance to inherit the kingdom is not a natural kingdom. It's a spiritual kingdom. And I can't die. I can't stoop down to undo those straps. I can't die and resurrect myself to bring you into that covenant of inheritance. But there is one who is, and there he is, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. He will enter into that covenant for you, the covenant of sonship. And then the last place I'll mention is on the night of the Passover, when Yeshua was having the Passover dinner with the disciples, and after they finished dinner, it says that he wrapped himself in a towel and had a bowl of water, and he tells all the disciples. Now you have to see this. The burning bush that spoke to Moses, the same flaming torch that entered into covenant on Abraham's behalf. That burning bush is right there before all the disciples. And what does he say? Take your sandals off your feet, all of you. He says, what I do right now, you don't understand. But afterwards, you will. He was referring to after I'm resurrected, you'll understand what we're doing right now. Peter says, I don't think so. I'm not down with this. You're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus basically says to him, you know what? If I don't, you'll have no part with me. You'll have no inheritance with me. You have to enter into this covenant with me. Take your sandals off your feet, Peter. So see, there you have that thread from all the way from Abraham to Yeshua to the disciples being brought into the covenant of sonship. The birthright is what they received that night. And so it's pretty awesome. So that's the sandal covenant. And then the final one is the betrothal, the marriage covenant. which is the bride and Yeshua. So in Genesis 9, verse 12 and 13, it reads this way: And God said, Let this be the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you, for perpetual generations. I will set my rainbow, or I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. So remember, God gave the rainbow to Noah when he emerged from the ark. Each of the covenants is represented by a primary color, and I'm talking of the in the rainbow. Red, blood is red, raw salt is yellow, and inheritance is blue. The color of the ultimate covenant with God, marriage, is white. White represents a combining of all the previous colors in the spectrum, just as the covenant itself represents a combining of all the previous covenants. Wow. So even the rainbow itself, just seeing the rainbow in the sky, is a sign of God's covenant. But each of those colors, primary colors in the rainbow, represent the four fundamental covenants that God initiates in our life and walks us through to bring us into intimate relationship with him. That's pretty amazing. But there it is in the sky, story of redemption. Back to Adam and Eve. So how can we know that God issued Adam and Eve a divorce decree? Well, let's look at Jacob's blessing Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. That's in Genesis 48. 17 through 19. Now, when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, so he took hold of his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, Not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother, Ephraim, shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. Okay, so you have Ephraim and Manasseh here. That word nations, if you look it up, it's goy in the Hebrew. It's singular. It means nations. It means people, usually of non-Hebrew people. The plural of goy is goyim. Basically, it means Gentiles or nations. So really, you could read that last verse, but truly his younger brother, will be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of Gentiles. Wow. How do you go from becoming your Hebrew, and how do you become Gentile? Isn't that wild? But that's what it says. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Ephraim and Manasseh. So Ephraim goes on, his descendants go on to become the house of Israel. And Manasseh, they go on to become the house of Judah. Now, the kingdom was divided. The kingdom was one, but then it was divided. It became the northern and the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom was made up of the northern tribes, which were also it was the house of Israel. So the house of Israel was the northern kingdom. It was 10 tribes. It was Reuben, Simeon, Manasseh, Issachar, Zebulun, Ephraim, Dan, Asher, Naphtali, and Gad. Sometimes they're referred to as the lost 10 tribes. Manasseh, or the house of Judah, when it became the southern kingdom, 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, okay? So talking about how God divorced Adam and Eve. And here's the passage that confirms that for us. In Jeremiah 3, verses 6 through 8, the Lord said also to me in the days of Josiah the king, have you seen what backsliding Israel has done? She has gone up on every high mountain and under every green tree, and there she played the harlot. And I said, after she'd done all these things, return to me. But she did not return. And her treacherous sister Judah saw it. And then I saw that for all the causes for which backsliding Israel had committed adultery, I had put her away, and I had given her a certificate of divorce. There it is right there. God divorced Israel. Yet her treacherous sister Judah did not fear, but went and played the harlot also. In fact, if you continue reading in that passage, God goes on to say that Judah is actually even worse than Israel, and but he actually divorces Israel, and he um, sends Judah into captivity into Babylon. And I'm assuming that the reason why he didn't divorce Judah is because he was preserving the lineage of the Melchizedek. But I'm not sure if that's, you know, right, right on or not. That's just my own guess. And so there you have it. So God divorced Israel, and that's the same thing he did with Adam and Eve in the beginning. Okay. So the lost sheep of the house of Israel. You'll like this. Matthew 15:21 through 28. And then Jesus went out from there, and he departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, son of David. My daughter is severely demon possessed. But he answered her not a word, and his disciples urged him. Now, I want to point something out. She says, Have mercy on me, O Lord, son of David. She is identifying and declaring him publicly to be the prophesied Melchizedek, the prophesied Son of God. So she knows he has the power to deliver her daughter of these demons. That's what's going on here. Okay. My daughter is severely demon possessed, but he answered her not a word, and his disciples came and urged him, saying, Send her away, for she cries out after us. But he answered and he said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Ha! Pretty interesting, huh? I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then she came and she worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. She's still declaring who he is. But he answered and he said, It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. And she said, Yes, Lord. Yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table. And then Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is your faith. Let it be as you desire. And her daughter was healed from that very hour. But he specifically says, Hey, I wasn't sent to anybody except the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Okay, Matthew 10 verses 5 through 8. These 12 Jesus sent out and commanded them, saying, Do not go into the way of the Gentiles, nor do not enter a city of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, preach, saying, The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely you've received, freely give. So here he goes. Here he is again, Yeshua, saying, Don't go to the Gentiles. Don't go to the Samaritans. Only go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, preach, saying, The kingdom of heaven is at hand. And then perform all the signs and wonders and miracles that's prophesied would take place when the Melchizedek returned. Go. You know, could it be that he says, go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel and show them that heaven has come to earth, basically? Because they knew that God would redeem them back into the family when they were issued the divorce certificate. Could it be that just like God gave Adam and Eve these tunics to be a sign of the covenant of redemption, the promise to redeem them back to God? Could it be that the lost sheep of the house of Israel knew that one day God would come and redeem them and bring them back into covenant with God? I think so. And I think that's what Jesus was saying. Go and let them know the prophesied one is here. The one who's going to pay the debt required for you to come back into the covenant. Call them, tell them to come. That's basically kind of what's happening there. And when you go to Luke
chapter 7, verse 18 through 23, reads this way. Then the disciples of John reported to him concerning all the things. And John, calling two of his disciples. Now, what's going on here is John's in prison. He's been thrown in prison. Okay. And so his disciples are reporting to him everything that Yeshua is doing, the things that are happening. Verse 19, and John, calling two of his disciples to him, sent them to Jesus, saying, are you the coming one, or do we look for another? And it's pretty interesting when you read John sending that message to Yeshua, wanting to know if he's the one. When John baptized Yeshua, John actually revealed him as the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And so it's interesting now are you the coming one, or do we look for another? Verse 20, when the men had come to him, they said, John the Baptist sent us to you, saying, are you the coming one, or do we look for another? In that very hour he cured many infirmities, afflictions, evil spirits, and to many blind he gave sight. And Jesus answered and said to them, go and tell John the things you have seen and heard, that the blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, the poor have the gospel preached to them, and blessed is he who is not offended because of me. I think pretty much what was happening here is John misinterpreted or misunderstood Jesus's declaration in Luke 4:18 and 19, when Jesus stood up in the synagogue and he read out of Isaiah, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, to set the captives free. John was waiting for Jesus to physically go and set him free from prison. And when Jesus never went for John, he began to question if Jesus was the Messiah, the anointed one. And Jesus said everything that the prophesied final Melchizedek would do, the signs, the wonders, the miracles, they're being fulfilled. Do not be offended because I've not gone to set you free from prison. I must be about my Father's business. So far I've taken you from, we started with God divorced Adam and Eve in the garden. Then we went to Ephraim and Manasseh. That became the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And then God divorced the house of Israel in Jeremiah chapter 3. And then we took a leap forward into the New Testament, where we read how Jesus said he was sent for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and to go only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And in Luke, also, John is asking, are you the one? And the Lord has to bring clarity to what he meant when he said, I'm here to set the captives free. When you get to Romans 7, now Paul is writing, and in the first 4 verses, it's pretty powerful. It says, or do you not know, brethren, for I speak to those who know the law, that the law has dominion over a man as long as he lives. For the woman who has a husband is bound by the law to her husband as long as he lives. But if the husband dies, she is released from the law of her husband. So then, if, while her husband lives, she marries another man, she'll be called an adulteress. But if her husband dies, she is free from that law, so that she is no adulteress, though she has married another man. Therefore, my brethren, you also have become dead to the law through the body of Jesus Christ, that you might be married to another, to him who was raised from the dead, that we should bear fruit to God. Hallelujah. So you see what's happening here? Yeshua comes and he says, hey, I'm about to die. The God that divorced you, house of Israel, the God that divorced you, Adam and Eve, I'm about to die. That day has come. I'm going to pay the price, the penalty with my own blood and die. And I'm going to be resurrected. And when I'm resurrected, a new man, I will marry you back into the covenant. That's Isn't that amazing? It's amazing what God does, the things that He does. Um, and so there it is in the scriptures. God divorced Adam and Eve, also the house of Israel. After He's raised from the dead, a new man, they can now be redeemed and brought back into a new covenant with God through Jesus Christ, Yeshua, of course. So that's one example of the story of redemption right there. Just walked it out. Uh, Another example of how God put the plan of redemption uh, in the beginning is in the heavens. The scripture says that the heavens also declare the glory of God, his plan of redemption. And so let's start with Job 38, verse 32. Can you bring out Mazzaroth, the constellations, not the zodiac, in its season, or can you guide the great bear with its cubs? The Mazzaroth is what the Greeks called the zodiac. And on this, in this image that you see on your screen, you see a list on the left, and then a column on the left and a column on the right. The one on the left is titled Traditional Name, or the zodiac names, and then on the right is the constellation. And so you have like Aries, Taurus, Gemini, but the constellations, what God called them from the beginning, is Ram, Bull, Twins, and so on, all the way down to Pisces, and the constellation is Fish. The following is an excerpt. It's another excerpt from Sue Watkins' book, the same book, Survey of Genesis Through the Lens of a Kingdom Scope, Volume 1. And this is Psalm 19, verses 1 through 6. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows His handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night shows knowledge. There's no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath He set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoices as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. Psalm 147:4. He determines the number of the stars, and calls them each by name. Isaiah 40:26. Lift up your eyes on high, and behold, who hath created these things, that brings out their host by number? He calls them all by names, by the greatness of His might. For that He is strong in power, and not one fails. So the following 5 points can be garnered from the scriptures above. Number 1, God's handiwork in the heavens speak. 2, His handiwork expresses knowledge. 3, the sun is emblematic of the bridegroom, Yeshua. 4, only God knows the number of stars, and it was He who named them. 5, God set the constellations into place, and their message is of His making. Dr. Chuck Missler, an amazing teacher who's gone home to be with the Lord. Look him up online. Look him up on YouTube. I mean, he's got just a library, a vast library of teachings that you'd be blessed by. But he has an excellent study called Signs in the Heavens, in which he states the following. If we view the celestial skies as a sphere centered above us, there is a band at an angle, the ecliptic, through which the sun takes an apparent path over the course of the year. The ecliptic is divided into 12 sections according to the 12 months of the year, and each section has its own sign. These 12 constellations can be seen in a 360-degree turn of the heavens, along with the 3 additional constellations associated with each one. Close attention to the sun's path through these constellations offers a consistent means of keeping track of the months of the sidereal year. Compare this quote that I just shared with you with Psalm 19. The constellations are the sun's tabernacle. Its path through them reveals a divine plan. The ancients called that path, or the message contained within the path, the Mazaroth. Mazaroth means a garland of crowns. A sign represents, it suggests of something other than itself. Psalm 19, verse 1 proclaims that the Shamayim, heavens, declare God's glory, the Kabod, his handiwork, the Maeshe, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, his handiwork, and the firmament, Rakia. In other words, the weightiness of his splendor can be found in the art he placed in the firmament, the constellations. The weightiness of his splendor can be found in the art he placed in the heavens. So did God draw his plan for redemption in the stars? Is the plan of redemption the knowledge the stars speak of night after night? This is the Mazaroth story. The Mazaroth begins with the Virgin. It's a figure of a young woman carrying an ear of wheat in one hand and a palm branch in the other. Virgo of the zodiac is the Virgin. And then moving counterclockwise across the sky is Libra, the scales. Next is Scorpio, the scorpion. Sagittarius, the bowman. Capricornus, the goat. Aquarius, the waterman. Pisces, the fishes. Aries, the ram. Taurus, the bull. Gemini, the twins. Cancer, the crab. And the 12th and final constellation is Leo, the lion. The Virgin foreshadows the virgin birth of the promised seed. Here's the interpretation. Here's what the constellations say. The Virgin foreshadows the virgin birth of the promised seed. The scales, the promised seed will bring justice. The scorpion, he will have conflict with the serpent. The archer, he will triumph. The goat, the promised seed is the Adonai sacrifice. The waterman, he will pour baptismal waters onto the earth. The two fishes, there are two houses, but they will become one. The ram, as the lamb, he will be slain, but will rise again. The bull, he cannot be defeated, for he is the ruling judge. The twins, the promised seed, will have a bride. The crab, the final victory occurs once the serpent's head is beneath the feet of the 12th constellation, the lion, who is the everlasting king. End of excerpt. Isn't that awesome? That's pretty powerful. I mean, Adam wasn't even created yet when God put this in the heavens. So, a little side note here also. Within each of the 12 constellations, there are 3 deacons, or you could say 3 additional constellations within the 12 main constellations. And the symbolism or the interpretation of those deacons, the message that's contained within them, adds depth to the meaning of each of the 12 constellations. It's amazing. If you have time, look up, you can go online and you can probably find some teachings online for free. But if you want to buy some books, there's plenty of books, some really good books on the Mazaroth. And it will really, really bless you. It's a blessing. But the Mazaroth is not the only place God put the story of redemption. The story of redemption is embedded in the scriptures down to each individual Hebrew letter. Remember, Proverbs 25, verse 2, it says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter. It's the glory of God to conceal a word, but it's the glory of his kings to search out that word, that rhema, that sod. And, in order to understand how to search out the treasure Yahweh has hidden in his word, there needs to be an understanding that each letter of the Hebrew alphabet represents a pictograph, a symbol. Each symbol has a meaning. When you take the meaning of each symbol in a word and you interpret them, they tell a story. These stories are called Hebrew word pictures. Below is a chart of, and on your screen actually, is a chart of the ancient Hebrew letters. The symbol for each letter, how to pronounce them, the meaning of the symbols. and and then I'm going to show you. If you just kind of look, you have the aleph, the bet, the gimel, the dalet, the hey, the vav, and the aleph is the first one, all the way down to the tav, which actually the symbol for the tav is that's a cross. Pretty interesting. So there are the Hebrew letters. There's the symbol and the interpretation of what each symbol means. And so, if you take the word peace, for instance, which in Hebrew is shalom, and you interpret the you take the Hebrew letters, which is shin, lamed, vav, and mem, and you look up the definition of each of those symbols, which is shin means destroy, lamed authority, vav attached, mem chaos. Here's what peace means. It means destroy the authority attached to chaos, or you could say it, the authority of God breaks the yoke that binds to chaos. Pretty powerful. Here's another one for you. The word keep. The word keep, when you look up the letters in the Hebrew that spell the word keep, it's vav, yad, shin, mem, resh, kaf. Vav is a nail. It means to bind. The yad is the hand or works. Shin means destroyer. Mem means to overpower. Resh means ruling authority. And kaf means palm or hand. So when you interpret that, the word keep in Hebrew means by his own work, his own hand. He binds and overpowers the destroyer using the authority in his hand. All of that from that one word interpreted in English, keep. Isn't that something? The story of redemption is hitting in the very first verse of Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, if you take this verse, just like I showed you, and you look up each Hebrew letter of these words, these English words in Hebrew, look up the letters on that chart, and you look up the meaning of the Hebrew word, you look up the meaning of every letter, the symbol, the pictographs, all of that, you put it all together, and you get this. In the beginning, before there was anything, the Creator God from the unseen realm cut from himself and formed the higher dimensions and the lower dimensions for the Son to govern, to inherit, that they might dwell therein with their creation. So, in the beginning, God started because he wanted family. And in the end, the goal was that Yeshua and Abba Father would tabernacle with us on the earth together. It's amazing. The story of redemption is in the 7 days of creation as well, which is it's pretty amazing. Actually, it's pretty powerful. I mean, you could find the hand of God all over just the first chapter of Genesis. There's so much there, and Genesis is actually it's like God's plan for a kingdom, to how the kingdom should operate and be governed. And I mean, it's just amazing when you begin to really dig and to see what God was really doing. It was not about a tree with bad fruit, apples that were forbidden, or whatever you want to call it. So the story of redemption is hidden in the 7 days of creation. Adam, of course, like I said at the beginning, was created as a son of God. Adam was created a son of God, not man. And so when he was created a son in the Father's house. This was before he fell. And he had a seat with the divine council as a Melchizedek. His purpose was to represent the people on earth to Yahweh and to the divine council, and and to represent Yahweh and the divine council to the people. And, in other words, I'm trying to find a good word. Okay, so here's basically Adam was an intercessor. And we have an intercessor today who's seated at the right hand of the Father. He is the head of the divine council now, Yeshua. And he is ever making intercession for the saints according to Romans 8. And guess what? He's making intercession for the saints according to the order of Melchizedek and not the order of Aaron. And so we have to remember that. Everything that Jesus did and taught to the disciples and to the people who came to hear him, he taught as a Melchizedek, not a Levite. And that's amazing. Adam was the first Melchizedek, the first king priest, king of righteousness, king of peace. He also knew, I have to believe, he knew he was stewarding the earth, the nations, which would eventually be taken possession of by the true and eternal heir of all things, Yeshua HaMashiach. Hallelujah. We do not own the earth. We don't own anything. Everything we have, that's been given to us by God, has been given to us to steward. Because everything that could be made was made through Yeshua. It was made through Yeshua, by Yeshua, and for Yeshua. For him alone. The story of redemption was written for him. We're not the center of the universe. We are not God's crowning achievement. Yeshua is God's crowning achievement. Yeshua is the center of the universe. And in him, yes, we're co-heirs. We're the center of all things in Yeshua. And it's pretty cool thought. Pretty cool thought to chew on for a bit. So let me just go over the 7 days here. So we're talking about the 7 days of restoration in Genesis 1. And you take the first 7 letters of the Hebrew alphabet corresponding to each of those 7 days. The first one would be the Aleph. The symbol is an ox. It means first leader, strength. And what did God do on that first day? He called forth light. By doing that, what did he do? He revealed the plan, which was the Son, S-O-N. And he also separated kingdoms, the kingdom of light and kingdom of darkness. Day 2, second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, is the Bet. The symbol is a tent. It means house or family. So on day 2, God put a firmament between the waters. And he separated the words of heaven, meaning the sun, S-O-N, from those of the earth, death. And so on day 2, he established the law of heaven. Or you could say the kingdom, the government. Day 3, third letter of the Hebrew alphabet, is the Gimel. The symbol is a camel. It means to lift up. And on day 3, he made dry land and seed-bearing vegetation come forth. On day 3, what he was doing was he was preparing the kingdom to receive the seed, capital S. And so on day 3, he prepared the earth to receive. Day 4, the fourth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, is the Dalet, or the door. It's a pathway. So on day 4, the sun, the moon, the stars, for signs and seasons, were set in their place. On day 4, what basically happened was God established the sun, his son, and the seasons of his work. And the seasons of his work, we can say at least there's 7 seasons. They're called the Feast of the Lord. It's Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, trumpets or Rosh Hashanah, atonement, and tabernacles. These are the seasons of his work. These are the cycles that he cycles through every year, bringing something to perfection in our lives every year as we observe the feast. And um, so what did he do on day 4? He introduced the king priest. Day 5, the Hey, is the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It means to behold, to reveal. On day 5, the birds and the fish came forth. And so he multiplied the kingdom of the Son, or his Son. It was day 5 represents the increase of his government. And then on day 6, the sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the Vav. It means a nail is the symbol. It means to make secure. On day 6, he brought forth the land beasts and animals. And man. Day 6, he secured his son's kingdom for inheritance. How did he secure his son's kingdom for inheritance? He created Adam, the first Melchizedek, to steward the kingdom for inheritance by Yeshua. And so on day 6, God established his kingdom. And then on day 7 is the Zayin, seventh letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And its symbol is a weapon. It means to cut. And so on day 7, he rested. And what came forth on day 7 is the reign of his son, the coronation. And so you have all the symbolism, the prophetic meaning, and you could just go through. There's so much more. But I just wanted to give you just an example of how when God says, I reveal the end from the beginning, he means it literally. Literally. And I know I touched on a couple of things that maybe you question or maybe not. I said that Adam had a seat on the divine council. And so the divine council, let me just say that they were made up of the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim. And so when God, Yahweh, said in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, I believe it is, let us make man in our likeness and in our image, he was not speaking. It was not the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit speaking to themselves. Because you have to remember, Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. And Moses would not have had the concept of a triune God, the Godhead, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. He wouldn't have had that concept. I think it probably would have been paganism to him. God had taught him and commanded him to tell the people, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. He's one God. And so more than likely it was either the Father and the Son speaking to each other in the presence of the divine council, or it was Yahweh speaking in the presence of the divine council. And if that's the case, either one, it doesn't matter. Let me just say this, that God doesn't need their counsel, and he doesn't need their permission. He's God, okay? But he's a righteous God, and he does things by legal means, like I said earlier in the teaching. Everything he does by legal means. And so one of the purpose of the divine council is that they are to witness. They are to be witnesses that everything Yahweh does has been done in righteousness. It's been done according to the law. It's been done legally, and they are the witnesses of that. And so that whatever God does, it's forever. It's eternal. It cannot be undone. And it's the same as when a believer, when we get saved, we give our life to the Lord and we become born again, right? We have a new assignment in life now. What's that assignment? Our assignment is to be witnesses. We're here to witness Yeshua and the acts of Yeshua, and that everything Yeshua did was done according to the will of God and not his own will. That everything Yeshua has done has been done in righteousness, has been done legally, And that's what we do here. It's nothing different from what the celestial sons do. And so there are many examples of the divine council, and I am more than likely I'll do the next message is going to be about that, and it'll be basically about angels. Let's talk about angels in the next teaching. Everything in the Bible that's called an angel is not an angel, and so that's just some food for thought there. But the other thing I was going to say is also made a reference to the earth being restored or recreated. And what I meant by that is that there was a civilization here before Adam's civilization. There was a kingdom here before Adam's kingdom. There were two floods and not one flood, being Noah's flood. And I know if you've never heard this before, you probably think I'm crazy. The only thing I would say is, when I'm going to put this, I'll put a teaching out on that as well, and it will bless you. It will bless you. I believe that part of God releasing revelation of the gospel of the kingdom is going to come from God exposing the things that has been hidden from us, the things that the enemy through religion has kept us from seeing and knowing and receiving from God. It's like we've been put in a box, a spiritual box, and we need to let ourselves out of that box. And you'll see that there's a whole new world to be discovered. I guess that's it. I'm going to stop there because I think this lesson was already it's a little bit of a long lesson, but it's just so important to go through these things. And I want to thank you for taking time to watch this or listen to it. I want you to know that if you look in the information box below this video, there is a link there that will take you to the posting on my website of this teaching. If you go to that link, the notes to this teaching are there for you to print out if you want them, or to just use them to follow along in the teaching. It's totally up to you. But I just want you to know I'm going to make my notes available to you. I'm going to clean them up a little bit. Hopefully they'll make sense to you. And sometimes I write in pictographs. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But yeah, hopefully my notes. So I'm going to try to make them as simple as possible, because sometimes I do write in pictographs. So all right, well, thank you so much again. I hope this message blessed you. I hope that you've taken something away from it. And until next time, let me just go ahead and say a prayer for you. I want to ask the Lord to bestow upon you the Father's blessing. So put your hands up in the air, bow your head, and receive this blessing. The Lord bless you and the Lord keep you, brother, sister. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace, give you rest. And the scriptures say that by me praying that over you, that I've marked you with the name of the Lord. I've marked you with the olive tav, the mark of the Melchizedek, and he will bless you. He will bless you. So if you have not, before I let you go again, if you've not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do that. Subscribe, and every time I post something, on the kingdom, you will be notified, and then you can, listen to the message yourself, and please share it with anyone that you think would be blessed by it. Please feel free to share it. And again, I thank you so much. This is Samuel. You've been listening to Smashing Pillars International in Houston, Texas. God bless you. Until next time, shalom, shalom.